Your employee just lived through something terrible: a workplace shooting, a natural disaster, a suicide, a violent customer incident. Hopefully, your crisis response team springs into action. You follow the protocol, you do everything right, but 6 months later, half your team is gone and the other half can barely function, and you have no idea what went wrong. Here's what nobody tells you. Your crisis response protocol was designed to manage the immediate emergency, not help people recover in the months after. And that gap is costing you your best people. If you're a leader responsible for crisis response in your organization, this video is for you. Because what I'm about to show you will change how you think about every protocol you have in place. If you don't know me, my name is Manya Chylinski. I survived the Boston Marathon bombing. I gave a TED Talk about invisible trauma and what it teaches us about leadership. And I work to help advance federal legislation, the Post-Disaster Mental Health Response Act, focused on expanding access to crisis counseling after disasters. And all of it started because my own city treated my trauma like it didn't count, because I walked away without a visible injury. In this video, I'm going to show you the single biggest flaw in standard crisis response. I'm going to give you 3 specific things you need to understand to fix it. By the end of the video, you will know why your current approach is accidentally creating a hierarchy of suffering, and you will know exactly how to change it. Here's the problem. Standard crisis response protocols still tend to prioritize what's visible and documentable. Everyone else is handled as optional, and that everyone else often is the largest group of people who are affected. So let me show you what I mean. Most crisis response systems were built around one core concern: that acute visible harm. Someone is bleeding, broken bones, you need to evacuate, find shelter, get food, get security. That logic makes perfect sense in the first minutes, sometimes hours after an emergency. You need to stop the bleeding, you need to get people to safety, you need to account for everyone. That isn't the problem. The problem is what happens next. Because once the immediate danger passes, the system quietly creates a support caste system. Tier 1, people with documented physical injury or death. They get clear eligibility, clear paperwork, clear empathy. Tier 2, direct witnesses or narrowly defined primary victims. They get some attention, it's usually short-lived. Tier 3, everyone else. People with psychological injury, moral injury, grief, panic, sleep disruption, functional impairment, a fear of returning to work, shame, survivor guilt. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out my video. If you want to learn more about building a trauma-informed workplace, or how survivors show up in the world and how you can support them, check out my newsletter down below. Sign up. And while you're down there, I'd love it if you click the thumbs up button to show how much you appreciated this video. Thanks so much. These people don't usually get care. They get resources. The number for a hotline to call, PDFs with information, reminders about their employee assistance program, and they're expected to self-identify and opt in. This group can easily become the majority of people who are affected by a crisis, but the system treats them like an afterthought. And this isn't really culture, this is policy. Let me give you a concrete example. The US 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund explicitly stated that compensation is awarded on account of physical injuries or death. That's the actual language. In many systems, proof of harm is something you can photograph. Even when other victim compensation programs include emotional or psychological trauma, the eligibility varies widely. Some jurisdictions cover it, some don't. Some require you to prove that your psychological injury was severe enough. Some require you to prove that your psychological injury became a medical condition in some way. So from the very beginning, the system is making a decision. Who counts as a victim? And it's doing that based on what we can see, not what is real. Not what is disabling to some people, what is visible. And when your employees see you doing that in the workplace, they learn something, that their suffering doesn't count. They learn they shouldn't speak up. They learn asking for help risks them being seen as weak or dramatic. So they don't ask, or they leave, or they stay and slowly fall apart. Let's talk about what actually helps in the first days after a crisis, because this is where many leaders get it wrong. Even incredibly well-meaning leaders. Some people assume that people need therapy right away. They assume everyone needs to process what happened. They bring in counselors and schedule group debriefing sessions. Here's the uncomfortable truth. One size fits all, single session psychological debriefing has repeatedly failed to show a reliable benefit. And for some people, it can actually increase their distress. Why? Because you're forcing some people to relive the event before they're ready to do so. You might be pushing people to disclose what's going on with them in front of their colleagues. And you're treating everyone the same when people need different things. So what do people need in the first 72 hours? First off, they need safety. They need clarity, predictability. They need permission to react however they're going to react because that's normal. They need reduced isolation. They need to limit the number of rumors they're hearing. They need practical help. In the workplace, that might mean time off, schedule changes, childcare support, transportation, adjustments to security. They need a low friction path to higher support if and when they need and want it. They don't need a diagnosis, they don't need a label, and they don't need to prove that they're struggling. This is the basis of psychological first aid. Focus on stabilization, providing practical support, connecting people to resources, and not forcing them to disclose what's actually going on with them. And here's the part that a lot of leaders underestimate. That email you send to everyone in the first 72 hours, that can either be helpful or it can be like throwing gasoline onto the fire. When the language is right, people feel seen and supported and they know what to expect. When it's wrong, people feel isolated. They feel like I must not qualify for help. They feel like they're supposed to just get over it. And I can tell you, that's how I felt. I said to someone, I don't qualify to get help because I wasn't physically injured. And that's where the real damage starts. There's a reason your crisis protocol looks the way it does. It borrows the logic of medical triage. Medical triage works extremely well for physical injuries. You can see the injuries, severity correlates with visible things you can see on a person's body. The pathways to treatment are clear, and it's clear who is urgent and who isn't urgent. You can see who needs help first. You can measure progress. You can document the outcomes. Psychological trauma works differently. Those severe impacts show up later. Could be days, weeks, or even months later. Inability to sleep, panic attacks, substance use, avoidance, conflict, absenteeism. The people who are most impacted are often the least likely to self-identify because they feel ashamed, or they don't think they qualify, or they're just too busy trying to hold things together. People don't need one intervention. They need layers of support. Some people will need basic practical help. Some people need community connection. Some will need focused counseling. Others may need specialized clinical care. That's why mental health experts use a layered pyramid-style model. Your crisis protocol probably doesn't reflect that. It treats the psychological impact as optional, or worse, it assumes that only the people who are directly impacted need anything at all. And that's why it fails. This failure shows up most clearly in the language that you use. Tiny word choices can create a hierarchy of suffering. When leadership communications say something like those injured or those directly impacted, everyone else hears something else. Oh, I don't qualify. Or don't make this about you. Or you're not supposed to be struggling. Those invisible victims, we don't just disappear. We go quiet. Stop asking for help. Stop trusting the leadership. And in the workplace, maybe start planning an exit. And then months later, you as a leader are shocked because you've got turnover. Here's some language shifts that can change things. Instead of, if you were directly impacted, what if you say, if this affected you in any way? Instead of, resources are available, say, here's what we're doing for you today and how to access more support. Instead of, we encourage you to contact the EAP, say something like, managers will proactively offer private check-ins. You can also book confidential support without manager involvement. One approach makes people prove that they deserve help. The other one makes that support the default. Use this structure. First, acknowledge the full impact of the crisis. Say something like, this affects people in different ways, people who were physically injured, people who witnessed it, those who supported their response, those who feel shaken or unsafe afterwards. Second, remove that eligibility. Support is available whether you're directly involved or affected indirectly. And third, offer layered options. That immediate practical support, manager or peer check-ins, access to confidential counseling, and access to higher level care if someone needs it. That way you're giving people a choice, not a test they have to pass. A functional crisis response team includes incident command or operations, people operations or HR, security or facilities, a clinical or behavioral health lead, a communications lead. Why is that? Because mental health response isn't just therapy. In fact, most people don't need formal mental health treatment after a crisis. You need to think about how you design your decisions, your environments, and expectations to help people function again. Most organizations outsource mental health to their EAP and they call it done. That's not a system, that's a referral. Mental health has to be part of the core response from day one, from minute one. Here's the uncomfortable truth. In practice, many crisis protocols function less like recovery systems and more like operational stabilization systems. They're optimized for restoring operations, managing risk, and documenting decision. Physical injuries fit that model. It's identifiable, it's documentable, it's insurable. Psychological injury doesn't. It's ambiguous, it's self-defined, it's got a long tail, it's operationally inconvenient. So our systems optimize for what we can prove and close on quickly. Victims being invisible isn't an accident. It's a predictable outcome. And if organizations truly supported psychological impact at scale, they'd have to admit that far more people were harmed than they want to count. Because that changes cost, it changes accountability, it changes the story. So most people don't acknowledge it, and you might lose your best people because of it. Your crisis protocol was built for the emergency, not the recovery. And that gap is costing you turnover, trust, productivity, and human suffering. You can fix this. Acknowledge the full impact. Remove the eligibility tests. Offer layered support. Change your language. And build mental health into the response from day one. Stop creating that hierarchy of suffering, even if you're doing it by accident. If you want to go deeper, watch my next video on exactly what to say in the first 72 hours. The scripts, check-ins, and accommodations that build trust instead of breaking. Because that first 72 hours decide everything.